Hello, everyone. This is my second attempt at recording part 2 of our analysis of Good Country People by Flannery O'Connor. I'm hoping it works this time. I noticed that my recording device wouldn't let me jump over to another screen off of these slides. So we're going to try this again. Hopefully this will work. So yesterday we left off for part 1 of my video. We were looking at these charts where I had taken notes about the characters while I read. And today I want to focus on talking about this particular objective. If you look at this little target here, I can show my understanding of the deeper themes and messages conveyed in the man versus man conflicts in the story. And in academic work, it's important that you recognize and you're able to convey your understanding of these deeper messages and themes while you're reading. It is a higher level thinking skill and not always easy to do. So I'm hoping that this tutorial will sort of lead you down that path where you can get better and better at finding these, uncovering these deeper messages and themes when you're reading, because we have 5 more stories to go in this unit. And I want you to get better and better, right? We're going to show growth in our English language arts standards by being able to do this. So just one of the many deeper messages within Flannery O'Connor's Good Country People is what's happening in the conflict between the mother and the daughter. It might seem on the surface like, yeah, you get it. They're not getting along very well. But this relationship is actually more complex than what is shown on the surface if you're just doing a surface read. These women, Joy Hulga and Mrs. Hopewell, they seem very different, but because of the best way I can describe it is their worldviews, it makes them similar in the way that they each take their belief of what is right. And I put or disbelief because Joy Hulga claims to believe in nothing. She's a nihilist. They both take their belief or disbelief too far. And that results in their own self-created isolation. They both kind of live in their head and in their own world. And they each are involved in what literary critic Fred R. Thiemann describes as self-deification, which I'm going to explain a little bit better. So Joy Hulga has this way of oppressing or suppressing other people with her nihilist viewpoints and her intellectual superiority. She has a PhD in philosophy. She's been to many, many, many years of schooling at university and believes that gives her sort of a superior place in the world. And Mrs. Hopewell, her mom, also suppresses or oppresses other people, but in a different way. She does it with these dead expressions, that are just void of any meaning. She uses these cliches or these aphorisms that are meaningless. They're just old, used, worn out phrases. One of them that I don't think she uses in the story, but I hear people use all the time and it makes me crazy is, "It is what it is." I mean, that's basically meaningless. That says nothing. But both of them, according to this literary critic, have self-deified. So we're going to explore that a little bit further because I don't expect people to necessarily know what self-deification means. All right, here's where I went wrong in my last recording is trying to get to this article. So hopefully it's going to jump with me over to this article. Otherwise, I don't really know how I'm going to do this. I did put this link for you in your own set of slides. So if for some reason I can't get it to jump over there with me, I might just have to read it. You'll hear me reading it, but you'll have to go and look at it yourself. I don't know. Let's see if this works. So let's see if it follows me. All right. I don't know. Oh, I think it did. I think it followed me. I believe you can see this Psychology Today article. I'm crossing my finger. All right. He explained self-deification brilliantly in a way that I could not have explained it better. And let's see if you hear the characters, Mrs. Hopewell and Joy Hulga, in what he's explaining here, because I could clearly see these characters doing this. All right, this should be cool. So it says self-deification. This is by Jeremy E. Sherman, PhD. There is no simpler, faster way to feel perfectly great about yourself. Keep in mind that he's writing this with sort of a tongue-in-cheek expression that he uses. So keep it in mind. Self-deification is fun, liberating, and easy. You don't have to be smart to do it. In fact, All right, everybody. I'm glad you can't see all the mayhem behind the scenes here as I record these videos for y'all of this analysis. I don't know if it's cursed or what's going on, but I am going to try and stitch two videos together after I just took out my credit card and paid for an extended version and a premium plan. I don't know. I couldn't get around this. It was like cutting me off at certain intervals anyway. So I'm going to try and stitch two videos together. Hopefully it will be okay and look okay on your end. I'm laughing because otherwise I would probably cry. It's been exhausting and frustrating. Anywho, I left off at this. So I started having us look at this article in Psychology Today, and I am just going to continue reading it. And okay, it did follow me over here. Yay. All right. I think I started reading it on the last video. We're just going to start over again. So this is called Self-Deification, exclamation point, written by Jeremy E. Sherman, PhD. He is definitely writing it tongue-in-cheek, so I hope you can kind of pick up on that humor a little bit. And I also want you to pick up on how our characters fall into this idea of self-deification, Mrs. Hopewell and Joy Helga, her daughter. All right, here we go. There's no simpler, faster way to feel perfectly great about yourself. Self-deification is fun, liberating, and easy. You don't have to be smart to do it. In fact, it's easier if you're not smart. It's fun because it makes you feel omniscient. It's liberating because it gives you an excuse for ignoring all the complications of life. All right. I think we're already onto something where our characters in Good Country People are concerned. It's easy because there are only 3 steps to self-deification, and none of them require any thinking or learning. All right, here are the 3 steps. Have a revelation. Wake up to some universal truth, a formula for being right always. Oh yes, that's Mrs. Hopewell in a nutshell with her empty phrases and then with Joy Helga and her universal truth of nihilism, atheism, and just this superior intellect. All right. It doesn't really matter which revelation, just grab one. It could be spiritual, philosophical, or religious. I think Miss Hopewell believes hers is at least somewhat steeped in religious ventures. I don't know. She's a little bit of a conundrum. She's a little bit of a hypocrite. She's a lot of things. And then spiritual, well, yes, Joy Helga is spiritual in that she doesn't believe in spiritual. She's a nihilist. She's an atheist. I believe I gave you, again, a link somewhere to what nihilism is. Look at that. It's important for the story. Philosophical, for sure. She has a PhD in philosophy. So she definitely is that. The best revelations reveal that the people who have it are like gods, in possession of a truth so important that it is their moral obligation to attack and defeat everyone who disagrees with it. There are lots of those kinds of revelations to choose from. Number 2, embrace your revelation. Feel it, absorb it, love it, promote it. Not for the revelation's sake, though that's good too. No, do it to give yourself the impression that you have absorbed it completely. Oh yeah, that's our characters for sure. Squeeze that revelation so hard that you feel like I think it's supposed to say, you feel like you have become one with it. You are the revelation incarnate. Number 3, trust your gut from now on. Having absorbed the revelation, you're now perfect, omniscient, nothing more to learn ever. Oh my gosh. Yes, for both those characters. They both absolutely feel like they have nothing to learn ever again. They know it all. You don't even have to consult the revelation since you already embody it. From now on, you can say and do anything. You may not be omnipotent yet, but you should be, you God. And anyone who attacks you for what you do and say is attacking the sacred revelation you already embody perfectly. Therefore, it's your moral duty to attack and defeat them. Escalate freely. The bigger their challenge, the more vicious your attack. You are on a crusade because you have seen the light. Now that you're a deity, here's all there is to defeating everyone who is not on your side. It's the self-deification formula, and it's easy. Say and do anything. After all, you're God. Everything you do from now on is for good cause. You don't even need to wonder about what that cause is, even if your old conscience never, ever comes back to haunt you. All you have to do is go back to the revelation, not for a refresher course, of course, since because you have already absorbed it completely. No, just for a pep talk about why it's right. Most revelations offer tons of things for you to read and watch, written by deities like you to remind you why you're right and everyone who disagrees with you is a jerk. Now, if that's not Joy Helga in a nutshell, right? Um, Giving everyone a refresher course in her philosophical arguments, her Heidelberg, her I'm trying to think what the other one is. Hold on, I got to go back to this. Is it Heidelberg and no, Heidegger and Malebranche. That's right. I had to remind myself. And she's always pointing out, correcting her mother and Mrs. Freeman, and then Manly Pointer as well about why she's right and they're not. Be the supreme and final judge who decides what's right, who decides who's right in every debate you enter. After all, you are God now, so have no other God higher than you. And if you happen to choose a revelation about God, know that you don't have to worry about him judging you. You've embraced him. He's on your side in every debate, so be his voice. You're the judge of who's right and who's wrong. And can you guess who's right always? That's right, you are. Be like rubber. Whatever they say about you, say it to them early and often. If they say you're arrogant, don't even think about it. Just say, no, you are. I'm the most unarrogant person ever. Oh, yes, for sure. That is both Mrs. Hopewell and her daughter. I mean, I could point to many, many scenes where they believe they're the opposite of what the person says they are. It's a formula. Don't even think about what the word is that they level at you. If it's bad, it's true of them and not you. So it's simpler even than Mad Libs, since they supply the word. If they say you should stop being so X, all you have to do is say, no, you stop being X. I'm never X. I'm the least X of anyone in the world. Okay, y'all. I hope that you're seeing and making this like text to life comparisons. I know so many people like this, and it's like, so when we are reading stories, we see these characters personified in our own lives. I know so many people like this. All right, see, simple. So simple, any idiot can self-deify. Try self-deification today. You'll be glad you did, at least in the short run. Others won't be glad, but that just means you're right and they're wrong. By the way, self-deification is the perfect antidote for feeling inadequate. It's much simpler than learning or growing. Don't improve, prove. Prove you're a god. Join the millions of other satisfied self-deifiers. They don't all agree with you, but they all agree on the one thing. Self-deification is great, and they should know, like you, they're always right. Ha ha ha. Anyway, I loved this article. It was exactly what we needed to compare our characters to. So back to Joy Helga and her mom. I showed you this Venn diagram in part 1 of my analysis. And I just kind of want to show you where I'm going with this now that we talked about what self-deification looks like, turning yourself into a god, right? Like, thou can have no other gods before me. I am the best, the most holy. So Joy Helga's self-deification comes from knowledge. But one of the problems with her knowledge, first of all, it's all book learning, and she gets some of it not quite right. When I talked about Heidegger and Malebranche, she reads them, but I don't think she quite gets them because, and I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but look up Malebranche and Heidegger and see what you think, where she's kind of getting it wrong, if you would. All right, so under the Joy Helga part of the Venn diagram, I have written Joy Helga's atheism. I could add nihilism to that. And university-obtained knowledge make her think she is superior to others. Absolutely, she believes she is superior to others. We can see that in her thought and deed. Thought, word, and deed. And then Mrs. Hopewell's, she's got this strong set of beliefs, this strong worldview that she knows what's best. These tepid, these cliched phrases that are essentially void of any meaning. She's taken that on as like her sacred verse, if you will. Where they intersect is that, yes, they're coming from different viewpoints, but both of their belief systems, both of their self-deification is leaving them vulnerable to attacks, really. And it also self-isolates. It keeps them isolated from one another, from the rest of the world, because they're right. And if you are a right fighter, try to change that about yourself, because it leaves you lonely. And I've slipped into that a few times in my life, and it's a lonely place to be, because people don't really like to hang around people who know it all, you know. But it leaves them mainly vulnerable in this story to manly pointers tactics, which is interesting. So I'm going to read the right side here, which says, it's just some notes that I made that says, both women are self-absorbed. Absolutely. According to scholar Fred Thiemann, the two are linguistically and spiritually self-absorbed and are attempting self-deification. And this is a note straight from his article. Such self-deification is not only sinful, but also oppressive. The deified self often desires to subject other selves to its deity. And that's why it's a lonely place to be, because people just stop wanting to be around you because you oppress them. It is obvious by their use of cliches, Joy's being nihilistic, Mrs. Hopewell's being dead expressions. Both Mrs. Hopewell and her daughter are making attempts at self-deification through the oppression of others. And again, this is what leaves them vulnerable to Manly Pointer's tactics, because first of all, they underestimate him, and he uses their belief systems against them. And I hope that you were able to kind of see some of that in the story. All right, moving on a little bit to one of the other targets that I wanted you to reach. One of the other I can statements is I can evaluate the resolution of man versus man conflicts and its impact on the story's outcome. So what is the resolution in this story? It's not the easiest to see. There's so many things in this story that aren't available at first glance and aren't available on the surface. So I took this quote here on the left. I took that from this slide, from this left-hand overview. That's where I got this from. And okay, now I got to find where I was here. Yeah. A resolution must be sought by characters working through their misunderstandings or through the triumph of one character over another in some type of duel, literal or metaphorical. Well, nobody gets into like hand-to-hand combat in this. It's not a sword fight or a gunfight or throwing anybody off a cliff or anything. So it must be metaphorical. All right. We do have a resolution to this story, but it's hard to uncover. So I kind of wanted us to discuss it here in my analysis. The resolution in this story is not easy to uncover. It doesn't have that feel-good, happy ending we're used to. There isn't a gunfight where the good guy defeats the bad guy. We need to read deeply and thoughtfully analyze who the victor is in this story. And to do so, it's imperative that we consider the author's, Flannery O'Connor, the author's value system. She is a devout Catholic woman, and she's living in the Deep South. I had you watch some videos about her as an author before we read the story for that very reason. Her being Catholic, a devout Catholic, and living in the Deep South has everything to do with this story and her other stories as well. This story highlights what O'Connor must see as the hypocrisy of Christians. And if you read the story, you know what I mean and why I called it Christians in quotation marks here, as well as what she believes is the faulty thinking of atheists and nihilists. O'Connor is definitely pointing out atheism and nihilism and the faulty thinking behind it. She was surrounded with a lot of atheists and nihilists at university, especially the Iowa Writers College. Who, if anyone, is the victor? Who is the hero at the end of the story? Who wins? Who's the victor? Literary critics have differing viewpoints, but the most common hypothesis, and this is my hypothesis as well, is that Joy Helga comes out as a victor, especially where this mother-daughter conflict is concerned, because she is the one with the changed worldview at the end of this story, unlike her mother. Now, you could make an argument that her mother becomes changed as well. But even to understand how Joy Helga has a changed worldview, we really need to go beyond what the story told us. So I want to talk about what happens after the story ends. You kind of got to go there as a reader and explore in your imagination how she gets out of the barn. She doesn't have her leg and she doesn't have her glasses. She's blind and lame. Does she yell for help? Can they hear her? How long before she's rescued? Is it minutes, hours, days? How do they get her down from the hayloft? Does she show humiliation? I mean, she certainly hasn't shown any humiliation up until now. How does she explain what happened? How she got up there and doesn't have her leg and her glasses, Will this humble her? So if we look at the Joy Helga side, at the end of the story, in the final pages of the story, this one comes from page 16. We are all damned, she said, but some of us have taken off our blindfolds and see there's nothing to see. It's a kind of salvation. So here's her feeling morally and philosophically superior again with Manly. We are all damned, but some of us have taken off our blindfolds. Well, really, she's actually one of the blindest people imaginable. She's very blind to the world. Joy Helga believes at this point the world is a giant void. It is nothing. She has her blindfold off and can see there is nothing. Then, without her glasses and without her leg, blindfolded in a sense, really blindfolded, truly blindfolded. Now she doesn't have a limb and doesn't have her glasses. Everything's blurry. Then is when she actually seems to have the blindfold off. That's actually when she starts to see things clearly. She realizes she's underestimated Manly Pointer and that her vulnerability points to the fact that she is indeed something. She can't be nothing, because if she was nothing, she wouldn't be vulnerable. If she was nothing, she wouldn't be suffering. And then in the last part of the story, it says, when she turned her churning face toward the opening, she saw his blue figure struggling successfully over the green speckled lake. Well, first of all, it's really not a lake, I don't believe. I think it's hills that look like a lake to her because of her foggy vision, her myopic sense of seeing. If Manly Pointer, think about this one. If Manly Pointer is representative of the devil and evil personified, as some critics suggest, have you thought about him as that yet? Joy Helga will have no choice but to now believe in something. And this is a Christian viewpoint and would have been a viewpoint of the authors, that you cannot have heaven without hell. So in order to see, for Joy Helga to metaphorically see, she would have to believe in evil to be able to believe in good. And now that she's vulnerable, she sees. I hope this made sense. It's really hard to explain. And I'm up for questions if you've got questions. But I do want to read this part that I wrote on Mrs. Hopewell's side too. It's interesting what she says at the end of the story. She says, why? She sees Manly walking up over the hill. Why, that looks like that nice, dull young man that tried to sell me a Bible yesterday. He was so simple. But I guess the world would be better off if we were all that simple. There's another one of her canned, trite, cliched phrases. He's not simple at all. She absolutely underestimates him, and it seems as if she's still underestimating him, whereas Joy Helga has seen the light. She still doesn't know what's happened to her daughter. So after the story ends, does she change? Does, what happened to her daughter at the hands of Manly Pointer, will that humble her? I guess we have to sort of answer that question for ourselves. I believe Joy Helga does come out victorious, that she does have her eyes opened to the world and starts to believe in something. So what I'm going to have you do, this is not an assignment, but I do want you to be exploring this like on your own. I want you to choose a different conflict from the story. And it's not an assignment right now, but I just want you to be thinking about this because I'm going to ask you questions along these lines at the end of our unit. It might be like part of our final. So I explored this Mrs. Hopewell versus Joy Helga conflict. And I want you to explore one of these other ones. Typically, students pick the Manly Pointer versus Joy Helga because that's kind of the easiest one to scope out, and that's fine if you want to explore that one. But there are conflicts going on with Mrs. Freeman and Mrs. Hopewell as well. So consider that one. And again, much more subtle, but there are conflicts going on with Mrs. Freeman and Joy Helga and Manly Pointer versus Mrs. Hopewell. Anyway, pick one of those to kind of think through on your own. And I hope this helped you see this story in a much deeper sense and that you see that it's a very multi-layered story. All right, thank you so much and good luck on the quiz that goes with part 2.